Hello and welcome. I've just lit some incense for your benefit because you're visiting me here. But of course I'm not sure why. It's not that you can appreciate the... if you want to, light some jasmine incense and you'll get the full effect. But of course this is not a rite or a ritual. It's an act of giving. When we offer incense to the Buddha Rupa, or we light incense, I like to light incense when I am expecting visitors. It smells nice, gives a nice atmosphere to this peaceful environment, and it's a way of giving. We have little we can give as monks, so I'm giving to you these incense from my heart, even if you can't appreciate them fully. I have had some visitors just recently, this weekend, a very nice gentleman whom came from France, although he's of English parentage and been brought up in France. One who'd heard about me, seen these talks on YouTube, and travelling, coming through Sri Lanka, took the time out to come down here to Bentota, where I'm staying, and spent an afternoon. We had an interesting and I hope useful conversation. I talked to him about Dharma. He spoke to me of his experience of other Buddhist traditions, and it was a very pleasant and useful interaction, certainly for me, and I hope also for him. And he also was able to join me the following morning to follow on my Pindapata, my alms round in the local town, which was also nice. And until today, I've also had another visitor, my son, one of my sons from England. He has in fact been in Taiwan, but he recently came to stay here for a few weeks. Not with me, but in a place a little way up the road. And he too has also been accompanying me on Pindapata and which is alms round each day, which has been very, very pleasant and nice to see him, but also quite useful because, as you know, I had recently some surgery, so I've had to be careful about what I'm carrying, so he's helped a lot with that. I've just seen him off at the railway station, bid him farewell because he flies back to the UK today. So it's been a little few days of visitors, and it's been very nice to be able to receive them here. Of course I don't have people staying here, I live alone, but there are places nearby people stay, and just to spend an hour or so one-to-one talking with people of my own language, mother tongue, has been, having been unable to do that for quite a number of years now, has been an interesting experience. I think maybe there was a little sampapalapa, but not too much, because living this life, living as a monk, a renunciant, following the Vinaya Pitaka, the way laid down by the Buddha as to how we live, within these Patimokkha rules, these 227 Bhikkhu rules, then we are cutting ourselves off from the rest of the world. Often people ask me about mobile phones, smartphones, and this, that, and the other. But, you know, they're no different to libraries of the olden days. Libraries, you know, places with lots of different books. First, you don't have to go there. So first, you don't have to pick your phone up and look at it. And secondly, when you do pick your phone up and look at it, or when you go to a library, you can choose which section you go to, what do you look at. I appreciate with smartphones there's some bombardment of other material, but actually not if you sign in with your own account, which is something I do because I don't possess technology. I use that is lent to me, but I can sign in for this purpose, my own account, and actually very little gets sent my way by way of distraction, because I think over time you prove you're not interested in such distractions. So there's a little point in them sending it to you. I get Dharma talks popping up, that's it really, other monks, which is wonderful. So in terms of Sampapalapa, we really spoke, even my conversations with regards to, with my son, were primarily on Dharma. He's very interested in Buddhism and my living this life. He in fact pointed me in this direction in the first instance in some years ago now, many years ago, and I was enjoying busy work life, but it was very busy, hectic. He was just finishing his university years and taking some time out, as people after university so often do. It was summer, and he said, "Hey Dad, why don't you just jack in your job," that means give it up, an English expression, "and come with me and go to the festivals, music festivals, things like this in the UK." A very hippie thing to do, you know, a very maybe irresponsible thing to do. When you're working in a job, you have a career. But it was a nice summer, and I thought, well, why not? And I joined him. And during this time also, he'd been experiencing, he'd been traveling previously, and previously experienced meditation on Goenka courses. So he was quite familiar with meditation from that background, and was a meditator, meditating quite a bit. And this interested me too, so I took up meditation. So just the background there is he was in a university studying anthropology, so he knew a little about cultures and religion and this kind of thing. When I got interested in meditation and found it very fruitful, alongside this sabbatical from ordinary working life to go and be a little less responsible and travel around camping in the summer, different music festivals, things like that, I noticed and realized a lot of freedom, a lot of liberation, the feeling of liberation was coming my way from simplifying my life, reducing, in fact, ending my income, and just getting what I could earn day to day, helping out, working at festivals, in the company of my son, but we went our separate ways. He did his thing, I did my thing, different music tastes, different social ideas, but this I found a very useful introduction to where I am now. This is perhaps where it all began, all those years ago. When meditation was going quite well, he started to get into his career, his new stage of life, using what he learnt in university to go into where he works now in the field of publishing. His meditation dropped off a little bit, but mine continued, but had got to a stalemate, a point whereby it could not really go further. And being that he knew about meditation, I mentioned this, and he said, "You should look at Buddhism." That's all, a passing remark. And anyway, I thought, well, yes, okay, so I Googled it, and I think I've told this story already. So from that, I added Buddhism to what I was already doing, practicing meditation. In effect, what I was doing out of the Noble Eightfold Path of Sila, Samadhi, Panya was just samadhi, meditation. Now, you'll see on YouTube in different areas of life many books, many detailed, courses, retreats even, all just meditation orientated. But as I've said time and time again, and you probably know by now, that in Buddhism, meditation is a very major part of the practice, but on the foundations of sila, moral virtue, keeping quite simple but very important precepts, moral precepts, no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants, and also the development of wholesome mind states and the reduction of unwholesome mind states. This is added in when you take up meditation in the form of Buddhist practice, what the Buddha, our teacher, taught us to do, how to calm our minds, become peaceful, tranquil, how to reduce unwholesome mind states and increase wholesome mind states through this adherence practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. And I found it very interesting when I combined the two that my meditation improved so much. And this is how I arrived at the situation where I am at now. I'm a monk. My son is a touring, travelling person on his holidays, but also working. He's a publisher, or in publishing. So it was useful. It was. We had some good talks. He saw firsthand now how I am living, how his father is living as a monk. He has met up with me previously in 2022, but we were both travelling at the time. I met up with him not where I was staying in India. I was on a what we call visa run. I had to leave the country and come back because my visa needed renewing. So I was visiting Nepal, and so was my son. I did stay in a monastery, and he stayed there also with me. It's quite a large monastery, so they had accommodation. But we met up just for a few days in Kathmandu, where there is a very nice Theravada monastery. When I'm in Nepal, in Kathmandu, for any reason, that's where I stay. Beautiful vista at the foothills of the Himalayas. You can see Mount Everest in the background, and very lovely part of the world if you've never been there, and it's right by the Swaribum Peace Monument. So we met up there, but both being travellers, both being new to, me being new to Kathmandu at that time, were more prone to a little Sampa Palapa and walking and seeing and having cups of coffee than the experience we were able to share this time, which I think was far more, from my point of view, beneficial, and I hope so from his, and enjoyable, as with my other visitor and other visitors whom have come here since I've been staying in this one place, because they are able to share with me and join in with me my daily routine, which begins very early at 3 a.m. when I wake up for meditation, and then at 6 I like to chant from the Theravada Thai Forest tradition chanting book, some little chanting, and I add in some Sri Lankan parts to that out of respect of where I'm staying, but just to warm me up for the day. And then I go on Pindapata, arms round, and when we return at around 8:30, some people may come here to where I'm staying, offer a little more dana, some food, and whomever's visiting me then can join me for my one meal at 9 a.m. Of course, they can eat again later, have some lunch and dinner, not being on the 8 precepts or living with me. But it's very nice to have them for me, to be able to share with them some of the dana I have been offered, and exercise hospitality, which I spoke of a little in the last talk, but the other way round, about hospitality, to monks. But it's very nice for us monks to be hospitable to others. The Buddha even spoke of hospitality and how we are hospitable to others when they come to stay, making sure that they're comfortable, that they have everything they need, the requisites, if they're monks or lay people, just pointing them in the right direction as to what they can do and help them as best we can. And one thing we can do when we have a surplus of food is, again, it's something we can give. It's our way of practicing generosity. And really that is, as far as giving is concerned, all, apart from, of course, sharing the Dharma. In my case, my experience of the practice, I don't consider myself at a level to give serious Dharma talks in terms of commentary on specific suttas and my interpretations and analytical views on such matters. I prefer to share simply my experience of putting those ideas into actual practice in everyday life. And that is the wonderful thing about being able to share with people when they do visit, as I've just experienced, not changing what I do in the day, but being able to share it with them. I have some local people here also who come here to talk occasionally on matters of Dharma, meditation, and other aspects of sometimes how I'm getting on, whether I have sufficient requisites, where I am staying is okay, and this is how I'm able to survive here so well and be able to practice. Now, towards the end of the week, I think new posture is coming up and I'll get back into my routine. It hasn't been much affected by these little spells of visits. But recently I have moved, I've recently had the little trips to the hospital. That's all now coming down and calming down, so I'm now back into my daily routine where my meditation might have gone down to 6 hours, will probably go back up to about 9 hours a day again. Well, it might sound an awful lot to you, but when you actually have this simple life of the renunciant, it isn't a lot. It is time to sit and just let the body settle, let the mind settle, the body relax, the mind become calm and tranquil. And if you think about it, some people might sit in front of a television or read a novel, a book, or even perhaps if they like it, have a hobby or do some study for just as long in any one day, and perhaps even every day, repetitively. So it's not much different when you find enjoyment and pleasure and peace in meditation. That you can get from those other forms of entertainment, stimulation of the sensual desire, of all that we feel that we need through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, to stimulating our thought process, our thinking, into satisfying those wantings and cravings and everything we try to do to continually keep ourselves, after all, what it is we're trying to keep ourselves, which is happy and not bored. Boredom. What is boredom? Well, boredom really is not wanting the situation as it is because we think it isn't satisfactory. And we think that by having something else, it will become so satisfactory. But when we understand that by getting something else to try and make what we consider unsatisfactory now, when we are able to understand and see that by getting that cold drink, that sweet drink, or listening to this particular music, or watching this particular movie, or doing this particular activity, when we see that all that creates is the desire for more of that and the cause of more suffering by not being able to ever get enough of that, then we're able to pull back a little bit and say, hang on a minute, what happens if I just see boredom for what it is? And settle and see where this feeling of boredom is coming from. And notice that it is aversion to the situation, because we're not enjoying what we actually do have, which is already a form of peace, a form of relaxation, a tranquility. It is already there, but we've hidden it, we've covered it up with craving, desire, thirst. We call tanha, this unwholesome desire, as opposed to chanda, which is wholesome desire, to want to be able to sit and practice meditation, or indeed our crafts or hobbies or studies, wholesome activities that are useful to our betterment, to improving our mind, to improving our physical wellness. These kind of activities are very different to those that we find by way of distraction from the suffering we think we have. So this is very much part of the heart, at the heart of Buddhist practice. Getting to the root of suffering. Where is it coming from? Wanting what we don't have, or not wanting what we have. When we have some discomfort, some pain, as I spoke of recently again, and have experienced a little of recently, but by no means, chronic or as serious as some people whom I hear from, but just some discomfort. I wish I didn't feel like this. I wish I didn't have to, move a little bit more slowly than I ordinarily do, or I wish I could carry this and not need some help. This is just not wanting the situation as it is, but the situation as it is quite normal, quite ordinary, and to be expected. We are born, after all, into aging, sickness and death, as I've spoken of before, because these bodies, like any vehicle we might drive, just deteriorate with time, need fixing occasionally, and sometimes are beyond repair. But ultimately we see the reality of this, and the only way we can really get to appreciate this is in the process of meditation. And a big part of meditation and assistance with meditation and backup for it, or the impetus for it, is renunciation. This being able to just let go. But let go is often spoken of as the ultimate goal, to know and let go, yes. But we can just let go of little things and give up a little bit at a time. Nothing major or significant. We don't have to give up our job, we don't have to end a relationship. But maybe we have 3 cups of coffee by routine in the morning, just have 2. Maybe we have 2 sugars, just have 1. Even the slightest changes of that nature, because they're actually a little bit difficult to do, then it makes an enormous change on your mind state. This is improving wholesome mind states. By actually using the strength you have to have what you need rather than what you want. And slowly but surely, step by step, you can practice renunciation without jumping in at the deep end as I did. After my little sabbatical, I did have to return to work for a little while to get all my affairs straight before I could then ultimately follow this path that I have. And as I've spoken about my son, he had to go in the other direction, being as he's obviously considerably younger, and at the beginning of his career and finishing university, went down the path of a career. Careers, relationships, a life of that nature. So a lay person, not so much a lay practicing Buddhist, but a meditator and a full appreciator of Buddhism. Not being a religious person, he can appreciate Buddhism for its non-religious side. It's no necessity to believe, but to just practice some of the ideas that the Buddha taught, that he can see are applicable in everyday life. So he's been a blessing to me in that sense, to have pointed me in the right direction in the first place, or a direction in the first place, and subsequently for me to see someone as a lay person whom is perhaps not so much on the path that I am, and the ordinary people I mix with are generally very devout, devotee, Buddhist practitioners. He's not so, even though he pointed me in this direction. He's not so, but he is very compatible with this lifestyle and understanding of it. And also, I'm glad to say, appreciative of it, because he openly tells me, he sees the benefits I gain from this life. And he is happy for me, and I am happy for him, and this is part of this relationship we have, not only with our families, but with Buddhist monks, nuns, with lay men and lay women, this interdependence that we have. But it can be, appreciably, sometimes through this process of renunciation, when lay people move into monastic life, whether they're monks or nuns, quite a difficult time for the families left behind, and also for the renunciant, the monk or the nun, leaving their families behind. We're, after all, developing metta, loving kindness, compassion, karuna, mudita, joy for others, but most importantly, upekkha, unreactiveness, equanimity is the English word for upekkha. Now, why I say that is because we don't become cold-hearted, numb, unseeing beings by adopting this form. We don't say, that's it, goodbye family, and forget about them. No. We, after all, are developing those qualities of loving kindness, compassion, and joy for others. But what we have also developed is equanimity, that we can see the benefits of renunciation and practicing and living in this form so clearly that ultimately we can see that the families that may be a little sad that we're leaving for a while, and also we are perhaps a little sad that we're leaving our families when we first ordain, or when we get together with them again like now and then part again. One has emotions, but we can see this with equanimity, unreactiveness. We don't have to wail and flail and cry and lament the parting, because we know what we're doing is worthwhile, and that they will see the benefits also, even if it takes a little time. This is what we're giving to lay people, both non-connected and family connections, by the process of letting go, giving up, renunciation. This is how it is a two-way, interdependent relationship, still not just of a familial, is that the right word, nature, but of a renunciant, a monk, and their family. It's not ex-family, they're still your family. You can still have contact with your parents, your sisters, your siblings, brothers and sisters. It's very important. It could be the times that monks have to go off, nuns have to go off and look after elderly, aging parents. But there's certainly a case for not ordaining whilst that's necessary in the present. You are required, and it is necessary, for all ordaining monastics to be able to be clear of those responsibilities, as well as financial commitments and debts, to put 100% into the practice in the first few years at least, in fact specifically 5 years. So one's lives are separate for some time, but you're not writing off the rest of the world, including your family, when you become a monk. And they, hopefully, will not write off you. I'm very fortunate, and it isn't always this way, that you can see your family that often, especially if you're living a very long way away, in a far off country, and your parents are elderly. But even if you're in a monastery within your own country, and I think for monks, nuns doing that, it's possibly even harder, because the temptation there would be to associate quite a lot with your family, which I think later on, for experienced monastics, that's possibly okay, no problem. But certainly in the early years, and it's possibly one reason that drove me to going abroad in the first place for ordination, rather than taking ordination in my own country, where it might have been felt a little bit different to renounce or not have much to do with your family when you're just an hour's drive away, for instance. So there we go. I don't know that I intended to talk about what I've talked about today. Well, I certainly didn't. I sat down to talk about your comments and your questions. That was my plan. But as I don't plan these or plan my comments on your comments and your questions either, I read them out from there afresh, more or less. That is the way I'd like to try and keep it, because this is how I'm able to react and talk to people when they're here in this way. I can light some incense and we can sit and we can talk in this way on Dharma, whether it's interactive, me responding to your comments and your questions, or whether it's me like today just sampapalappering on, talking about my recent experiences and what I've been going through. Either way, I like to keep it relatively informal on a discussion basis, keeping a situation whereby I can learn from you, from the comments and feedback I receive, and you can also hopefully find useful something in whatever I say when I'm sharing my experiences of living this monastic life as I do now, and all that entails. I'm not sure exactly where we are in the week, but I know that I think we're not going to be so many videos this week, which hopefully will give you the opportunity to maybe look at your questions, and if you have a question that I haven't quite answered yet, maybe just type that question in, just the subject line, the one word will do. So if it's a whole question about pain or a whole question about hindrances in meditation, you can just put that question in to the search on this channel, English Buddhist Monk, pain, or English Buddhist Monk, hindrances, and I think the videos come up. You may have to scroll down a little bit to find the correct one, or you might find something more useful and more appropriate to your answer from someone else. But you will find often that the questions that you have already been answered. So I will get round to them, because I do answer questions not only once, over and over again, because each time as we talk about matters of Dharma, it's coming from addressing a different set of circumstances and situation, so it is always applicable. After all, the Buddha's teachings are relatively simple in that there is suffering and there is an end of suffering, and it's just that. But of course, the teachings on that subject are so numerous, something like 84,000 different suttas, and many volumes of books in the Tripitaka, the baskets of the scriptures of Buddhism. There's not just a piece of paper saying there is suffering and an end of suffering. There is all of these stories, but they're all leading to that same answer, that same fundamental teaching of the Buddha, and how to arrive at wisdom and ultimately freedom from suffering in this lifetime, which is just as easily, not easily, just as attainable in lay life as in monastic life. And it's easier or harder in both those for different reasons. In lay life, because there's less renunciation but more distraction. In monastic life, there's less distraction but a lot of renunciation. Ultimately, what this boils down to is the reason I became a monk, was the realization that acquisition is dukkha, that is suffering, and that renunciation is sukha, that is happiness. Understanding acquisition is dukkha and renunciation is sukha was what spurred me on, led me on to this way of practicing. But you too can know that in lay life. Know that all you need to do is pay the bills, feed the family, do whatever you want to do for sustaining your relationships and a comfortable life, but don't get too drawn in to having to continually upgrade, improve, and better oneself, whether it's even materialistically or even intellectually. Unless there is a specific need or purpose, often these drives, often these things, these goals, these ambitions are driven by craving, by tanha. So identify in your life what is driven by chanda, that wholesome sense of desire. And that you'll find is following the Noble Eightfold Path. That is driven by chanda, chanda only, not tanha, which will drive you, or you will drive in your renewed, often new car, to the cinema, to the entertainment, to the restaurant, just trying to satisfy insatiable desires. So I took a step back from that for a little while, a little sabbatical, and found it so liberating, so freeing, and so much sukha, happiness, coming from it, which is really contentment, as opposed to the emotion of happiness. It stems from contentment. So much of that I continued in that direction. But you too can do that also. So I hope there's something useful in there for you today. If so, please use it and maybe share it. If not, just let it go. Don't trouble it about it. Don't debate it in your mind. Forget about it. Thank you for watching. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.